Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good night. I'm Dave Darrington, and welcome to Working Out Loud. You can see we don't have a video today, the roller, but that's okay. We want to try something new. Today, welcome. It is Friday, February 17th. We made it. Another week's done. I always like to have these episodes at the end of the week where we can kind of take a breath, reflect. And now, today, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to kick this off again with this podcast, this live stream. We're talking about all kinds of things, but generally we're talking out loud. We're working out loud. I like to say if you're not learning, you're churning. What that means is you're not learning about the concepts of, hold on, what's that? Okay. We're streaming on that. I was making sure that we were streaming. That's great. If you're not learning, you're churning. If you're not learning about new products, you're not learning about new ideas, and you're not reaching out there and connecting with other people in the marketplace who are doing the same kind of jobs we are, right? You're missing the boat. We've got all kinds of things to learn. And today, I've got my friend, Mike Gregorio. Welcome, Mike. Why don't you say hello, introduce yourself, take a moment. Welcome.
Thank you, Dave. Very, very happy to be here. Thanks, everybody, for joining. I'm Mike Gregorio. I'm the Director of Professional Services and Customer Onboarding at Top Hat. Top Hat is an ed tech company in Canada, serving primarily higher education, and learned a lot from the customer ed community over the years. Very happy to be chatting with Dave today.
Well, I'm excited too. These are always fun, and today we're going to talk about something I think that's pretty dear to heart for both of us, right? Value, improving value, adding value, and in our roles, I think, and sometimes it's phenomenally hard. And so let's frame it up. As my co-host for C-Lab likes to say, I always have to say frame it up. But to frame it up, here's where we're at. Value is behind everything we do. And customer education teams kind of have a challenge. If you're early in your customer education journey, right? Maybe you're in a small company, maybe you're just starting out, maybe somebody tapped a wand and said, I designate you as our customer education manager now. What does that mean? Well, part of it doesn't just mean you're pumping out content, right, Mike? That's part of your job. But the real part of the job is, what is, Mike, okay, let's simulate. I'm your manager, or you're my manager, and you say, hey, Dave, go build this customer education program, right? And there's kind of two aspects on that. One of it is, I'll go build that program, fine, right? What's involved in building? You might tell me, okay, well, the administrator role of the platform is really hard. Go build something for that. Or, hey, we need to put a new learning pathway out there for another kind of personality. Okay, cool. But you know what? All right, I'm going to be bold. I'm going to be contentious. Do you think we, as in like all the people across the world doing our job, do you think that we do a good job measuring?
What a great question to ask. Oh, no. So you just jogged something in me, which I think the first time I ever talked publicly in the customer ed community was about metrics. And that was maybe 4 years ago. Right. And it's a perennial question. It's a perennial question. And
yeah.
So we probably have gotten good at measuring. The question, are we measuring the right stuff?
Oh,
right. Are you measuring the right stuff? And do you even know if you're measuring the right things? Do you know when you're measuring the wrong things? Because certainly you can get a lot of false signals, right? Or a lot of useless signals.
Yeah.
And I know I've been there. There's and I mean beyond vanity metrics, right?
What's always a vanity? Well, let's hold on there. Let's talk about that. Measuring is super hard.
Yeah.
Every time I go, you can measure vanity metrics real easy, and I think a lot of people think, oh yeah, completion rate, right? And yes. Well, how many people came to my class at all, or how many people registered? Those are exciting. I've got some pictures today. We can work through some stuff, but I think it's easy to get distracted. It's not how many butts were in seats. Instead, it's more, well, you built this program, Dave, and what the heck? What did it actually do for us 1 month from now, 3 months from now, a year from now?
Yeah.
Not today. Okay. Well, I think that frames it up pretty well. Let me do one more thing here, and that's I want to put a little bit of, I don't know if I want to call this fear, but I want all of you, I'm breaking the fourth wall here intentionally, and I've been this guy. And Mike, I hope this tips off all kinds of conversations. Here I am. It's 2023, February. Gosh, wow. Bunch of companies are laying off. And here I am looking at my program going, I don't want to be that person. How do I really think about the value that I deliver as a leader, as a team, to my own, and that's impact. So let's get back to impact. We wanted to talk about two things. One is proving and measuring impact. And two is going beyond that. We want to measure impact, and then we want to show how we impact what we actually are measuring. So It's like, okay, I set the framework up, right? Now I have a dashboard and I can see stuff, and it's like, okay, now it's the next quarter. How did we move the needle? All right, is that a good place to start, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Let's start off on measuring. So take me through your ideas and maybe how you do it.
I see my old friend Lindsay Kriegerson from Thunkable in the chat, and a lot of these ideas were like thought partnered with her in the early days. And we think through measuring. I will admit that understanding the leading indicators, right? That was a real process, and understanding what to look at, what to measure, the levers you had to push. And a mistake, openly now I can call it a mistake, that I was making early on when I started learning about this field and this domain of customer education, was trying to measure everything, or to try and impact too big of a field all at once, right? When in reality, there's probably a couple strong levers you can lean on with your customers at key points in the customer journey that actually will be easier to measure, and you can really tell the story about the impact that your program is having, or importantly, not having in certain points, right? And I think that's like I think maybe the second half of that sentence is like really the challenging thing, because I suspect a lot of customer educators, like, we're not quota bearing teams. We don't have a number to hit. Like, we may, but some don't. And so, like, saying like, hey, something isn't working, like there can be a lot of like anxiety, especially in the environment that we're in over the last 12, 14 months.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right. But I think arming your executive with the knowledge to say like this isn't working and this is why, now here's how we're going to go fix it, like that's already a step ahead, right? But it all starts with understanding that maybe there's probably only one or two levers that you may need to be pushing on, and measuring those as like the early on indicators of success later on.
Okay, let's start with that. I've actually got some pictures and photos and stuff of programs that I've done, and I was scrambling before. I'm like, oh my God, we can actually talk about visual. So I had to like remove some branding.
I was worried you're going to say it was me from some, like you found old pictures of Mike somewhere when, it was my punk rock.
We have baby photos.
Oh yeah.
No. I can do tortures like that. But maybe this is a good place to bring some of that up. Let me experiment. And there's all kinds of ways we can turn this discussion today. But what I really love to do is talk about that value of what are we even looking at? So here's some of the things that I was looking at, Mike, when I started. This was, and I can actually transparently say this was from Gainsight. When I worked at Gainsight, I loved Gainsight for one reason. Well, not one reason, a lot of reasons. But one reason is that it was really easy for me, even as a semi-technical leader, to construct, because what Gainsight had under the hood was basically a database with integrations to Salesforce and other tools, and abilities to present and manipulate, merge data together. So I was able to take my learner data, looking at my Salesforce CRM data, and show outcomes. And I think this is a conversation point like I like to start at, because, okay, Mike, first thing I do every time I go to a new company, or I actually interview with them, is I say, what's your stack? What's your educational stack look like? we're going to get way in the weeds today. So, hey, gang, I'll say for the folks in the audience, if you have questions, stop us at any point. We're happy to take questions. I'm monitoring that in a separate channel. So, but the first thing I always ask is, well, what data are you collecting? Do you have a learning system? Learning management systems are databases, right? Because they have all the information about what a learner, who they are, what they did. What's your CRM? Your customer relationship management platform. HubSpot, Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, Homebrew, I don't care. And then what is your visualization layer? Well, now you're like, what? Do you have, Power BI or Tableau or just, straight up Google Data Studio or whatever? And then the other thing is, so that's three things, two data sources and a data visualization layer. Then what's the last one? Our product telemetry, product usage data. What did you do in the platform? And that's the last and final straw that makes an edgy stack. I'm just going to call that an edgy stack, an educational stack. Those are the things you need going in. And if you don't have them, you're kind of screwed, right? Because what are you going to be able to prove? Vanity metrics. Okay, well, let's do that. Let's talk vanity metrics first. It's, there's stuff like this. Who went through the program? I'm going to get back to this in a little bit. How much did the program get used? By whom and when? Those are things that are important. But we want to get to something like, let's see. Do I have another good picture here? These are probably some of the best ones, and I can't zoom in. It's like the leading indicators, and there's lagging indicators. Like a leading indicators, I see somebody went to a class and they did something. That's showing you a signal that, I can look here and I see you, Mike, went and did this admin class on this date and you finished it. Cool. But that doesn't tell me the full story. So now our job is to bring all these together, to munge all this data together and get to a story where I can say, and this is one I love, where you're seeing the progression of my university and all the material in my university and me trying to push the messaging out and get more and more and more and more people going to that product that I delivered, and then being able to measure the efficacy or the impact of that. So I'm kind of leading the story here, but I wanted to visually show.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Is that a good place to start?
Yeah, I'm laughing on the inside. I think I have top hat versions of each of those slides. Like I'm almost down to the template. Like that's pretty funny.
Is that anything you have anything? Well, I guess you can't show it because it's proprietary.
So I have something. I just pulled it up and it's a scatter plot, but I think it's like it gets at this, right? Where and there's no customer data in here. I'm happy to share it. It's just our first time users.
Yeah, go ahead. I can stop screen sharing.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You can do that too. This is what I really do. Working out means we can show people stuff.
Yeah, share screen. Okay, let me see. I haven't shared screen in StreamYard before, so let me.
Yeah, it's just I'll do our training in the bottom setting or present and then window and then.
Let's see. Can we see this?
Yeah.
Yeah, here we go. So it's like this is like where they're starting with our team and where they're ending up, and you got customer health on one side, customer maturity on the other, and then sort of like live numbers of renewal rates so far, right? And so when people start using, because we're education platform, you sort of have hard start and end dates, right? So people start using, the brand new users are all sort of low health, low maturity, and then they, the plot scatters, right? And the top right hand quadrant's really where you want to be, right? And where you want your customers to be, and you want to understand what the renewal rate is. At least I do, right? In each of these quadrants, and then where to focus when things seem really out of line, right? So this has been like a really nice, easy visualization to see the impact that the customer onboarding team makes immediately on folks, and where we can focus our energy when we do, annual planning next year. Like, well, here's this particular class of customer that actually is a little bit underperforming based on, from what we would expect.
That is that. Oh, I have another one to show. Well, let's go back to.
And I will just let me say that, like, when we're on the topic of metrics, impossible without being friends and having great relationships with your data team. internally. So like this is like
Yeah.
not a home built, right? We really need to have clear and strong relationships there.
So yeah, let's I wanted to zoom in on this. Let's see, 200%. Okay, well that's ridiculous. Um, Zoom 100. Okay, this was my version of it, and I
Yeah.
just did this in Google Data Studio.
Google Sheets, yeah, same.
And Data Studio is phenomenal. If anybody isn't using it, one of the coolest ways to get started with some basic customer education material, because a lot of times you have Google Workplace,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't know that Google Data Studio is there and free.
Yeah.
It's free.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you pay for it. But what I was able to do, and again, like let me go back to what we were talking about. Here is me 2 to 3 years after I started at a company. And foolish me, I didn't force the issue of that stack question and say, oh, we don't have these things. Okay, I can build them. A couple or 3 years later, I still won't have those stacks in place. So I found other ways to achieve my outcomes, which is all the data was there.
Mm-hmm.
But the last mile is, you just said that make good friends with your data, with your people, right? Especially ops and data BI people.
Mm-hmm.
I did that. Then they moved on. So here I am. I have the data. I had all of my Google. Okay, so the LMS I had also was publicly and open to Google tracking data. So that means Google Analytics is recording what pages my customers go to on my LMS. So then I can take my LMS data, and then what you see here is that here is a page view. Now that page view comes from Google. They know how many times you went to my LMS page and where it was. But then I kind of hacked this by saying, okay, Mike, if you went through and did this class of mine and say it was like one of these the top performers, and then there's a survey that comes out at the end of it. Well, I know you went through and you took the class, and you may or may not have completed it, but I don't care about that. But then at the end of it, you took the time to fill out a survey and said to me whether this was valuable or not. Now I have a matrix. Now I can go in here and go, oh, okay, here's all of my material, every class I have that's publicly available. And what you could see from this chart is we actually did okay. Up and to the right, high performers. Again, sentiment is the x-axis, page views is the y-axis. This is amount of volume. So these make sense. And let me intuit this a little bit more. These really big ones up here, all of these classes were the introductory material for everybody. So you're getting tons and tons of page views. They're small classes. They're easy to go through. And as you would expect, we're hitting out of a average, 1 to 5, we're hitting a 4. That's solid, right in that high performers. Now this quadrant down here deserves explanation in my context, because what I found is some of these, the big ones, were still related to that introductory material for everybody. So they're still performing, but most of this content was now niched down to a different learning cohort. Technical people, fewer numbers, but they're still doing super well. So I think it probably would have made more sense to say this is a different cohort and then show that high and low, these people should have been up here, but this is in context of volume.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is the kind of stuff that I'm tracking to, because if we don't focus on this kind of stuff, we don't have these, if we're not able to measure value and measure the impact that we have on that value we're already delivering, where are we?
I think there's sort of, you and I answered a question in there implicitly, which maybe like ties back to the theme that we framed this up with, or one of them, about like those sort of lost, like tech layoffs and showing value, et cetera. Just the importance of understanding, especially at a new company, if you're joining, the communication channels and how data and insights are communicated, right? And like if it's through something as simple as a spreadsheet and a slide deck that just like refreshes on its own, then roll with it, right? The tooling can be simple, right? As long as the message is really clear.
Right.
And I think it's just like it might be worth, like, it's worth maybe not forgetting that, right? Like these internal, the internal networks, and like how you like just like share information internally is like just roll with it, it doesn't have to be overly complicated.
Well, let's step back a little bit. Now we've shown some stuff and we've talked about our programs. But when we're initially trying to prove and measure that impact, what just kind of organically off the top of your mind, here you are a few years ago, maybe you're just starting out. What are the things that you need to start doing? First off,
Yeah.
first blush, I'm coming in, I know what tools I have. Now it's okay. I would always start building content first, and this is an early day. I'd start building content. We got to build content. We got to hurry. But do you start with certain metrics or things that you want to track?
Yeah. Yeah. So when I remember starting and definitely the inclination, the instinct was just to go build content. 100% just go build. Were I to advise myself, then I would say don't build yet. Do two things instead. Talk to customers first, successful ones, unsuccessful ones. And I want to emphasize that too. Understanding the difference between successful and unsuccessful customers will really focus your attention on what needs to be built.
Right.
And then second, understand there's going to be a couple key measures and indicators for when somebody will make it to renewal and be a lifetime customer and a champion for you, right? There's probably some kind of threshold of activity or advocacy that they're reaching with your product and your company that you can measure, right? And so understanding how to really accelerate the journey to that level is really important. So if I had to go back and advise myself, I would advise myself, instead of just going to build, validate what you're building, understand success, not success, and then understand what separates in numbers terms the great customers, or the ones who return, they have a new habit, they've made it part of their work life, right? What separates those from the folks who failed. And yeah, I wish I understood that earlier. It took me about a year to learn that lesson, but it's okay. It's a lesson.
How did you learn that lesson though? Because okay, I mean, this is really important to me, Mike.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can pull something up again. I had
a very customer-centric VP, and a team who was very. We were really, we were young. We all young in the field. We wanted to learn and to build it right, and we had to build and then destroy things a lot until we got it right. And then it's once you get it right, the content will stick around, and you can kind of refine and revisit versus have to rebuild. So that's what I learned, but it's really just speaking to honestly just speaking to customers, right? So for the folks who made it through the the introductory courses that you built, right? I in the early days when we released our Top Hat certification, our credential in active learning, I would get on a pseudo user research everybody who made it through, because I wanted to understand if we were delivering the right, was it what they were expecting? Did it take the amount of time that they thought it should? Was it valuable use of their time? What did they think was missing? So I wanted to understand everything about it and understand just the experience as a whole for them going through it, which is as a user, right? Was it enjoyable? Was it not? Was it challenging enough? And so this fed and we made some minor changes and minor tweaks and stuff that I thought was really important to improve. They didn't think at all was important to improve. There was other small frictions just in sign up to the program that they wanted to relieve. So you learn a lot, right? And I would have been hours down the wrong path of improvement were it not for just asking customers for their feedback, because we're kind of putting a product out there, right? So just take a product mindset to it, ask questions about it, talk to customers a lot. That's how I sort of tried to accelerate that learning journey.
Well, okay, so I want to go back to that. Yeah. So then what you're saying is organically, and you and I both discovered this, and not just you and I, many of our peers have discovered this on their own, in their own little petri dish of learning. And it's not something that I think is completely intuitive. But what you're saying, I think, is talk to your customer first.
Talk to your customers,
first, right? Because you might go, okay, what are we going to measure? How are we going to measure it? What's important? But that's in your head, man. It's in your head. And then you go talk to that first customer, and I love that. I love what you're talking about, that narrative of, I call this an empathy audit.
Yeah. Yes. 100%.
It's really weird. And one of the things that I've been doing since I joined Service Rocket is we have a platform called Advisory Services.
Mhm.
And what this is we do that very thing. I have a schema or a process by which I come in and Mike, let's say I was going to work with you and we're going to build a program together, or you have a program and you need to tune it, or there's something wrong, right? And I want to bring us back to this moment. I love what you're talking about because you're talking about all these most important things that are not intuitive to anybody, but they're part of your playbook, or they should be. You come in, and what I will do is say, okay, give me a list, Mike, of 20 customers. And I want these to be your best, your worst, and somewhere in the middle on a line. And you go, my worst, well, I don't want you to talk to them. No, we're going to talk to them. Why? Well, if I know from the customers, and what I mean by worst is the ones that you love them, they're your friends, right? But they're struggling in some context. And this is why, I mean, we have a spectrum of people in our audience, and a spectrum of people in our customer base. Some are going to have a harder time to pick up your product than others. It might be age, location, language, background, attitude. Who the heck knows? But I wish I could show you this report I did. Went through and I talked to all these people and I put them on a chart. And this is I'm a scientist, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have an N equals 7 or greater, you've got a statistically viable data source, even qualitative, mm-hmm. Right? So we took all that and then I started talking to people. And you learn things. So we'll go back to what was the most surprising thing outside of the last point you said that you learned from a customer you wouldn't have expected and changed your value? I mean, the things that you're going to look at.
Oh, to this day, it still floors me because of how simple it was. But we would have to explain what an incognito window is in your browser. Which is like this, like there's just like some nuance of how different accounts work with Top Hat, where you need to sometimes to get a certain experience, you need to use an incognito window, and the customer's like, nobody knows what this is. You have private browsing, like you need to explain this and the value of it and why it's important for this part of the training. Like, oh, okay. But then that informs like years later, it's like it's also informing like how we frame like asks of product and like parts of the user experience that should be smoother rather than like requiring our users to go through this extra step of creating a private browsing. And like this is like the silliest, like dumbest, like simplest kind
you
of
think,
thing.
But it's not really.
But it's not. But like that's a friction point. Like if they're not going to be able to do the self-paced training because they don't know what an incognito browser is, like obviously they can't even open the door to enter the wonderful world of our customer education program. Like it's just not possible, right? So that's that was a funny thing for me to learn.
I didn't even think about this, Mike, but that underscores the entire value of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because to measure value and then to impact that value, you have to unlock these little. I keep laughing. Adam and I got on a thread lately, and you'll hear it when we release the next episode of C-Lab. But we got into this thread of Benoit Blanc and the whole Knives Out kind of investigative detective work that I always say I put on my detective hat when I come to work.
Uh-huh.
And as a customer education person, I think one of the number one keys to unlocking value is you got all these rocks you're having to look under. You have all these people you need to talk to. And our job is not flipping easy. So, and I promise I'm going to bring us back. The audience has got some great questions here. We're going to get to some of them in a minute. But you have to know what you're up against in order to measure value. So to impact that value, you discovered a blocker and I've done this too. Like when I was at Gainsight, what I did not understand coming in was this. Our folks were saying, oh my gosh, customers just don't get this concept, or they just can't get it. But I don't really know what it is. And I go, okay, I'm a management consultant. I've done this for a living. And then as an education person, because I was that too, I went in and I started talking. Mm-hmm. And what came out of that is they go, well, I don't know what a database, I don't know how to do a join or a lookup table, it was these fundamentalish concepts like you were talking about is, oh, well, duh, yeah, I'm going to do a incognito window. Oh, that's click, 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 done. But now you're presuming your customer knows that, and you haven't trained them on that because that's not part of your platform.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think about that? It's like, it's the weird nuances.
It is weird nuances. And yeah, that's like a very like acute example. The other like, and maybe the one that's like more germane to a lot of customer ed folks is that, and I think increasingly a lot of our conversations are moving in this direction. We need to be educating in the domain on the domain in which we are working in addition to our product, right? So there might be stuff that's like germane to and important in your domain. So for in higher ed, it's like frequent assessment and feedback. Like this is very, very important. And so we still have to like, I think every customer ed professional is probably well aware of this, right? But I have to like reinforce this with like, why is this part of the product important for you to learn how to use? Because in the world of the science of learning in which you are a professional, this is what's important for transferring knowledge to your students in a classroom. And so first, here's the main practice. Now here's how it comes to life on our product, and now you can connect it to like a real world impact with like with your students in my case. And then also you can start telling the story of product behaviors, and then how your program is impacting these good like real world behaviors with your customers. So I think that's like probably where most of us are living is tying this, like not necessarily incognito windows, but like there's some basic behavior within your domain that might be forgotten, right? And you probably should do well to talk about it.
Yeah, this is good. This is the key to unlocking. Well, let's go back to proving and measuring that impact.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think what we've done today yet is talk about those like table stakes.
Yeah.
No, it's not completion rate. It's not like how long did it take, but it's what are the things that you really find on average are impactful for any customer ed program.
Yeah. I think what I'm increasingly focusing on is changing behavior, right? And behavior changes, and are we, and this is really hard. Like
how do you measure a behavior change?
I know this is like working out loud. At least like learning out loud, and like Mike D riffing out loud a little bit. But like you ultimately, all of us are trying
to lost your audio a little bit there. I don't know what's going on.
Can you still hear me? Sorry. We good?
Yeah. Keep going. Keep talking.
Okay. All right.
There it goes.
Fingers crossed that it stays.
Maybe.
Yeah, like we all want to change a behavior, right? Like that ultimately.
No audio. Crazy.
No audio.
So that's the audience. Are you seeing? Is it me? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Test. Okay.
Okay. Eric and Charlie say they can hear me.
Test. So
it's just, can the audience hear Dave? Yeah, you can hear Dave. So just.
And I can't hear you, Mike. That's just bizarre. I don't know why. Let me switch over my audio.
All right, let's try that. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it was my audio. I'm sorry.
Amazing. We have a top hat corporate value for what just happened, which is being good in the woods. Because you just saw
being good in the woods.
Yeah. Well,
oh my God. Yeah, good in the woods meaning, okay, I got the knife out, I killed the bear, and I'm back on. It's okay.
Yeah, you can solve a problem no matter what, right?
No matter I had this happen to me the last time, so I'm gonna check my equipment. Okay, continue.
So I think we're talking about like education to change behaviors, right?
Yeah.
And I think that like really you want to measure the changed behavior, and if a partial completion of part of your program results in the changed behavior, great, right? Like I think that's fine. Like what I'm increasingly focusing on with my team is we know we want people to get to a certain level of activity, especially in the first 30 days and then 90 days of using our product. And we want to see them doing certain things and encouraging them on that path to doing certain things. So we want like their behaviors to change. We want them to have a habit and a plan before they start using our product, because these are all the things that actually matter for long time successful use, but they're hard, like they're very squirrely and they're like hard to measure because like it's kind of fuzzy,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So,
Well, let's slow down a bit,
yeah.
because this is the magic. So you say, I want to change a behavior, and it's not like simple behaviors. So a behavior could be as simple, right, as I'm logging in every day. That's it. That's it.
Mhm.
And you can measure that behavior more easily than you can else. But let's orbit on something. Let's focus on something that's more difficult.
Mhm.
What is a metric? What is behavioral change? Take a real one. What are you dealing with at Top Hat? What is the one top value or a top thing that you want to influence people to do?
Yeah. Consistent interactions with their students every week, right? And this has to happen synchronously and asynchronously. So it isn't just, let's say, putting questions in a slideshow that you're presenting in a lecture hall. It's, I want you to be building assignments outside of class that inform what you're doing in the in-class time together, that then informs what you're doing outside of class next time. So there's like two sets of behaviors that I want to see. And usually customers are really good at one of them and not the other. And so then our instructional designers focus on developing or changing the behavior on the part that needs more work, right? Like you are really good at the slide presentation, haven't thought about the interaction outside of class and the asynchronous stuff. Or you're really good at the asynchronous stuff because you have, you're using the higher ed LMS for a whole bunch of things, but you haven't really thought through your synchronous activities and the time that you're using together, other than just like constant uninterrupted exposition, as I'm sure like all of us may have sat through when we were students.
Oh God.
Right. So like that's like the very first behavior that usually has to change, like this or that. And that's the germination of the plan, like the training plan for for that customer. And I see Zach Brown and Lindsay Kriegerson both being former top hatters. Please, if you think I'm missing part of the story, just jump into the chat, and I won't call on you, but I'll kind of call on you.
Okay, so I'm loving this discussion, Mike, because this is the heart of what we're working out loud. We're trying to fix problems. So okay, I want to understand this a little bit more. Let me parrot this back. What I didn't hear you say is that, okay, Top Hat is an educational platform for learning professionals in a scholastic environment, right? Academic environment, collegiate, high school, K-12,
Higher ed, so university. Yeah.
University. Okay, so the challenge is that I'm hearing here. This is almost like student success.
Yeah.
But right, it's truly customer success, and it's truly actually. Isn't this one of the foundational elements behind the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Are you trying as an organization then to, the person I want to influence as an educator, they're busy. They might be an adjunct who has a day job, right? And now you're teaching that teacher to be a better teacher because, okay, I was this person. I would go to a class once a week, every week, teach a 4-hour class on video game design. I loved it. And then what you do is you go do stuff and you have class activities, you assign homework, and then you know what? Student looks up, okay, well, oh gosh, it's a day before class. I better go, and you're reading a bunch of stuff and you're doing a bunch of stuff as a student, and then crap, you're not learning. And the teacher's accountability is, I want to draw you in and have a conversation over time. I just want to, show up and dump lecture. That's horrible. So what you're saying then, Mike, is I want that teacher to change their behaviors to not either just be an asynchronous teacher or an in-person teacher. I want them to fluidly be able to do, like I see this happening now with elementary school teachers, and I'm getting text from them during the week on my phone, which is great because I read it, right?
Yeah.
And if you give me an email, I'm like, what do you want me to donate to charity or whatever? Right. So now you're measuring that. Now tell me, how do you measure that? Where is that? You've got product usage data, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. So
Can we go on a journey, and then, because I want to do about another 5 minutes of this, and then I want to switch over to like the impact of the impact.
Yeah. So this is there's sort of like industry complications around, like, just because we're working with universities, like understanding things like drop fail withdrawal rates at schools and like student grades, that is like a little bit hard to share with a vendor, and like we get that. But increasingly we're we know that we can enable. So let me preface this. I think there's an internal version of this story and there's an external version of this story, right? Like there's the customer facing, like, but there's the version that works for customers, there's a version that works internally, and they're formed exactly the same way, right? They have the same structure to the story. And so with customers, like, we know that the research says if you do A, B, and C with in any learning environment, you should have this result. It's like 25 years of active learning research and data that says this. Lots of customer ed professionals are putting this into action too, right? We know that with our product, we can accelerate your ability to have the success and expand the reach, thanks to our great services offerings, expand the reach more quickly of how fast you can have this result, right? And so now, like, now that we're sort of enterprising up as an offering, like, we can start to tell this holistic story, right? And you're going to see, and we have customers who can like self-report, before I was doing a paper textbook, now I'm doing this other way of teaching, and I see engagement go up, I see sentiment go up, right? The vanity metrics in higher ed would be like course evals, those go up, but so do grades, and and dropout rates improve, and so there's all kinds of things that happen. Final exams, those scores go up. So like our customers self-report this, so they must be doing something right, in terms of. So that's the second order impact. That means that your programs are probably succeeding, your product is working. And by programs, I don't just mean like your customer ed program. Like, obviously the promise from sales has been like fulfilled by the customer ed and customer success teams and the product itself. So like everybody's coming together to tell and to make like the customer ed program succeed and to make the customer successful. So like I think there's that.
That's the loop.
Yeah, that's the loop. That's the whole loop, right? That's the whole loop. Actually, on this note, can I just be cheeky for 1 second? I know your colleague Bill Cushard, I think last week, said a customer ed is a marketing function. Like, it should live in marketing, and I think that's like entirely wrong. I think marketing should live under customer education, right? Like, why even seed the
marketing
seniority?
should wait, did you just say that?
Yeah,
out loud?
Yeah,
marketing should wow, live under
wait,
customer
is
education.
this hot takes or is this a different show? I may be confused.
This is extremely this is on fire takes.
So because I think there's something to that, right? Like everybody needs to participate in the education and maturation of the customer at every stage of the journey, and so the parallel internal story, when you come to like measuring, showing impact, is how are your programs lining up against the processes that you have, and how are you impacting every step of the customer process internally? How are your programs impacting the journey, the emotional, psychological journey? Speak to empathy, right? The empathy audit that that your customers are also going through. And I know, when I transparently, when I've looked at this before, my programs do much better on a process measurement than on a journey measurement, right? So like helping somebody through adopting a new product, and like the psychological effort to change their habits and their work like actually we don't do as well in that as we do like supporting the sales transition from sales to CS. Like that's a little bit easier, rather than
right.
So anyways, so I think that's like a long-winded answer, but I think there's
I like this. So okay, let me give you some air. What I heard you, and if I unpack this a little bit, this is super exciting, because what you're talking about, like, if any of you are listening to this and you're like, what in the heck? It's the sophistication of an educational program is so high level. And this is why I keep talking about, I talk a lot about customer success, I talk about marketing, I talk about SEO, I talk about all these crazy things. We live, Mike, in a confluence of a lot of different streams of data.
Yeah. So it's a lattice, right? So just a lattice work of everything. It's very complicated,
It is, but the thing that I am increasingly interested in about is, let's go back to your contentious statement about how marketing. Well, no, I want to actually work with this, because we talk about marketing a lot. Every time we talk about marketing in customer education, like on the C-Lab podcast, everybody blows up. And because marketing people are excited, they get excited
Yeah.
about this. I was just talking with another friend of mine who has that marketing bent, but she's now in customer education pretty solidly. And all of our conversations are about this mechanics of reaching people. But then the education part, it gets deeper into your soul. This sounds
Mhm.
weird. This sounds like it's Friday. Okay. I'm not even, I have energy drinks and that's all, my friends. But we're trying to fundamentally change what people do and how they feel and how they act. Because if you as a customer, oh gosh, okay, I'm gonna do a quick lightning round question. Name your favorite B2B software that's not the one you work for.
Ooh.
Can be B2C too.
Oh, what's something that's been really good? Okay, I'll say Gong. Yeah.
Oh, this is great. Okay, we have a bunch of Gong friends out there.
Yeah.
Let's go with Gong. Okay. When that brand comes to you, what is the value that you think about that? What is that value that that product gives you? And why do you feel towards that? Why do you emote towards that?
So, I mean, for me, it's like the level of insight that is possible via it's like through every step of every customer conversation you have, right? The
Yeah,
ability,
yeah,
and so that's the first thing. Second, the ability for people and like internally to do all kinds of peer instruction and shadowing of calls and sharing of best practices, right? The product team can get in there and hear the voice of the customer directly and immediately. Like, and I haven't said anything about the product itself yet, right? Like these are all like
yeah.
very you know, like it's like enabled, like it's like the product is set up in a way to like you can't help but be a better enabled organization simply by adopting. I'm sorry for I don't know, I'm like doing the sales pitch here. Didn't mean to. But like that's like that like for me that's the
But you're
value,
doing
right?
a sales pitch for another company.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but this is the value that like I think it provides, right? Like in why like I would call it like a favorite in the tech stack, because it just makes all these things easy, you know, and so therefore like I think like for sure it would be harder to do one's job, and like you have like an attachment to it because now you have a whole set of behaviors that would be harder to literally engage in, right? Like my team shares, we share customer calls all the time, and like it's facilitated by this product, right? And like that would be like part of our team's identity and culture would go away, and I don't want to lose that either, right? So there's it's just it's like part of the it's part of the cycle. So like ideally like your program can like really like seep into like whatever product you have, like you're educating people, like you need to find a way to become embedded in people's life like that, right? And that's and I think that's like it's a noble mission, you know. And that's just onboarding. It's just like you're making people's life better than it was yesterday, you know.
I love. Oh my gosh, this is great. So what you've said, and let me bring it back to our discussion and talk about the impact and the value of that impact.
Mhm.
That okay. Let's. You know, I'll shout out at Gong. Friend Stephanie's at Gong, leading that program. Hello, Stephanie. Um, we these programs are really hard for the reason that you've just said. Okay, you're telling a story right now about
Mhm.
another platform or product, and which is
Uh-huh.
okay, I can gush about all kinds of products. I
Yeah.
did that about Gainsight. I loved
Uh-huh.
Gainsight and because of what I could do to bring all this data together. Let me tell you why I like Gong too. And I've worked with Gong and I've used Gong in education.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a use case for education that some people might not on the surface think of because we normally think of that as a sales engagement technology.
Mhm.
And what do we call that? Conversational intelligence now.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
It's about okay, you and your I saw in your title you have customer onboarding, and that's so now it starts to click for me why intentionally you did that because that you're on that journey
Mhm.
with the customer and you care about that customer's journey and you're looping back. Sometimes I think that's great because sometimes depending on who you are, you get detached emotionally from your customer.
Mhm.
And I think the emotional attachment to our customer base is why I call education, this education function we have, customer education. Even if you want to call it enablement, even if you want to say marketing's in there, even if whatever, if you put the customer first, you're always focusing on what's important because we're a product led growth company or whatever. And we depend on our customer using and understanding the product that we make.
Mm-hmm.
So what you've done there in a moment is said, oh, this other product, I have a really soft spot in my heart for it. How did they do that? You know, and now what are they measuring? Because okay, the in there, the one of the metrics that you were talking about that I would talk about is the time to first value.
Mm-hmm.
And the time to first value is the boom, light bulb went on in my head. And I go, oh, I understand this platform. And that's me sitting in the dark at home. It's raining outside. It's Friday. But now I got what Gong does. That's a value moment.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're chaining up those value moments, right? Aren't you to measure? So to measure value, you're going, it's not necessarily Dave went to the class, he took the class, check. Dave went into the application and he did the one thing that I told him to do in the class, check. No, it's Dave now ends up using, and we'll talk about Gong. Now I have absorbed, I've gotten licenses for every one of my trainers. They're recording all their calls in Gong. I have set up like play cards and things like that within Gong. I'm looking for the like things like now I actually have a balance metric. I want to make sure that every trainer speaks less than 50% of the time. And that and then I want to see the I don't know, I'm just making stuff up. So you've got all this data and all these things in play that now you have like a three-dimensional grid of things that I can impact. And now we know, okay, I'm looking for time to first value. Let's just talk about that one metric. If I know my time to first value is 30 days today, to impact that, what am I going to do? So this is the last of our conversation is impacting the impact. What kind of plays do you do? And then let's take one call. What kind of plays do you do to impact the impact? Is it just you're looping through and you're looking back? Do you have like a retrospective? Do you have like a summary that you do every quarter, every month?
Like with customers individually or with the team? Or
with the team internally to think about the efficacy of your programs.
So we do this on an ongoing basis. And so by that, there's some metrics that we just track like all the time around maturity and renewal rates. And but like maturity is really important because for us, it's the number of folks who get to a certain level of use, they portend like a very good relationship with the school. And so there's all these like knock-on effects that become possible when you create an individual champion, right? Or when you start educating different levels of a university. In my case, like if a professor going through our level 1 active learning credential is great. When somebody who works in the Center for Teaching and Learning and is an academic technologist on campus, when they do it, that's a little bit different, right? Because then all of a sudden they're an influencer, they can advise, like they're doing, the job of an advisor for folks for who and like what tools to choose and how. And so like that's a different level of influence, right? And so we want to see lots of people sort of getting to the level of just like proficiency, and sort of more folks I would say so two things. We want more folks to get there faster, right? And for us, 30 days is really key. We have 2 aha moments. When you get introduced to our product, there's 30 days of experience that are very, very important. And those aren't really like in product or like in class, but then there's 30 days in class that are very important. When our customers have to onboard their students into the product, for like lack of a better word, and that has to go really smoothly too. So there's 2 first impressions that have to go really well and have to be really smooth, and where we have to like show value in really short order, where like you imagine value and then you see it come to life, and that's the like true aha moment. And then we have customers who stick around.
Wow. Okay. So you've lasered in on that. So you know that those 2 moments in time are crucial, but those are harder to measure, right? It's so that then do you have them put in your system and you can say, okay, at this moment in time, I can see that happened or not, and I can see this happened or not.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can watch those by account. Like you have a CSM that goes through and then talks about all that.
Yeah. So for brand new customers, those are still with my team. Our CSM team works with our returning professors. But we absolutely focus on the behaviors we want to see in those first 30 days. And then we still, and it's funny, Lindsay's in this chat. Zach would have done this too. We send out, like, we call them course consultations. So it's a lo-fi thing. It's like an email or like a templated Google document that just gives professors, like, here's what you're doing really well. Here's recommendations to start trying so you can do even better. Right. And depending on what their goal was with us, because we do goal assessment too, we want to like show them that they're making progress towards this. And we want all of our brand new professors to get it. So at this point in time, the team is literally focusing on this activity because we know it's going to drive and change the behavior that we want to see. Right.
Yeah.
So, but you have to like know these leading indicators, right? These small leading indicators are the things you have to measure to get to the lagging indicator of champion, advocate, person who refers, other customers to your brand and product. But they have to have, student success, right? Like they need those small things along the way. And it's important for in our case, the professor to know that they're succeeding. Right?
This is phenomenal. All right, we're wrapping up on near the top of the hour here, but what I really appreciate in this discussion, Mike, is that we've had a very organic discussion around what's really going on. And we've talked about the emotional impact on value, which is something that I don't think is usually thought of. This is a human activity.
Yeah.
Teaching and learning so what's happening right now is that we're seeing this influx, this rush of AI technology and machine learning technology and this assist technology, but none of that's going to work until we can line up what are those value moments. And the value moments are ones that are very difficult to measure. And that's where I would say, if you're a novice, again, breaking the fourth wall, and you're wanting to learn this kind of stuff, let's reach out. Let's take one question here before I do the final outro. And we're not hard. Are you hard on time? Do you have to have a hard stop?
No, we're okay.
Okay, we'll go a little bit further. I saw a couple questions. So let's go to Zach here.
Yeah.
Zach said, when it comes to communicating value upward, VP or C level, okay, I love where we're going already. Thanks, Zach. Do you have recommendations on how granular to get? Should it always be back to the objective measure like revenue or product behavior? Is it worthwhile to also include qualitative metrics like satisfaction and self-attested learner confidence?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, Zach, thank you for that.
Okay, so I will I'll share candidly and maybe a little bit it was so the last conversation that I that I had with my last manager. She said, Mike, you need to be better at this specifically. So I think it's well, which is fine. It's a learning curve, right? Like the understanding. And I know last week you spoke about this too, like the exec level soundbite from customer education to the executive team is very important, and getting good at it is very important. And so it's a skill that you need to develop. And part of that's understanding what's important to your executive team, what's important to your executive. I think understanding, like I know, like right now for my executive team, they care about the hearts and minds of customers, and they care about the data, right? So like we need to tell both those in a very like compact way. And I'm just admitting to a learning curve here, right? So like like learning out loud for
change the name of the show.
Yeah, learning out. But it's a hard thing to do, right? It's a hard thing to do, and it requires lots of practice. Certainly for me, anyways. And really like narrowing in on like what is the soundbite that the executive team will hear. That's really important. And it depends a lot on the composition of the executive team too, and what they're like, who's on it, how well do they already know the program, there's all kinds of things that could influence here. So appendices go a long way. But what I would recommend specifically though to Zach is to workshop the soundbite or presentation with a couple senior people who you know really well, right? So like for example, if Dave, I was in your organization, I'd probably come to you first and say, hey Dave, this is what I wanted to talk to the exec team about, or here's how I'm thinking of positioning it. What do you think? And just like share it around a little bit, socialize the message, refine it, and then and then develop the the final soundbite and product. I think that's probably the best.
I like solution. That. This is where, and Zach, I'll put in my add on is I always have a walking around deck.
Yeah.
The walking around deck is stats from my LMS, no boring stuff,
Yeah.
but it's also that high level stuff is what is the customer saying? What are the latest CSAT? Like, did I do a survey? What's a
Mhm.
great thing that I learned from a customer? How are they doing in aggregate? I like what you said about an appendix. If you have a simple simple PowerPoint or whatever in its stock, every month you do the same thing. It's here's performance of my learning platform. Here's how many people are going through. Here's who we're engaging, and here's where they're at. All this, whatever you can imagine. But the big things I've always found are talking in the language of your leadership. Hey, Jane, you know what? I see that we're really focused on retention this quarter. And I wanted to show you that we were able to do an analysis to show that customers who went through this onboarding program that you created, Mike,
Hmm.
are 88% more likely to retain and not churn than if they didn't take that and somehow opted out.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, yes, thank you. I'm going to use that in the board meeting. Yep. You get to that board level attention and you're feeding your leadership the information. This is so important because if we don't do it, I get so laser focused sometime, then a leader comes to me and asks for me for this stuff. And I go, well, now I got to scramble. I think part of our jobs as education leaders
Mhm.
is to bring the value and the impact of that value into the conversation with our executive leadership always and forever.
Mhm.
That what we're trying to do is pull together all of the learning that happens throughout our organization and centralize that into one place and to say, this is my job, folks. I'm showing you how we impacted and we influenced our customers. Increasingly so, I'm thinking about calling us customer influencers.
Yeah. Nice.
You know,
Yeah.
are we educating? Yeah, but are we influencing? Maybe. All right, I think we're way over time. Everybody on the show, lots of questions, lots of notes. We'll have to look at those in the two. We picked out a couple of them. Mike, tell me a little bit more about you on the way out the door. Where can we contact you, and a little bit about Top Hat?
Sure. So LinkedIn's probably the best place. You can find me, Mike Gregorio from Top Hat. Also Mike D at tophat.com. Always happy to meet over virtual coffee. Love drinking coffee. You probably saw me take a few sips over the last hour. And so Top Hat, yeah, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we are education technology company primarily in higher ed, focusing on just enabling professors to create active learning experiences inside and outside the classroom via interactive lessons, interactive textbooks, and so on. So that my team specifically is the team of customer onboarders and instructional designers that work with brand new users and really help our professors get value really quickly and see student impact as quick as possible. So that's what I do. It's what the team does, what the company does. And always happy, especially if there's anybody in the alternative academic community or people who are thinking of moving outside of academia, always happy to chat with you too, because that was my path. And I didn't know what was possible or what careers were possible outside of higher ed until I moved to a startup. Never
Yep.
would have thought this path was possible, but close to 8 years later, here I am. So I'm always happy to chat with those folks too.
Fabulous. All right, so now I have to do one more thing, which is I got to show my pitch, which is again, I'm Dave Darrington. I work at Service Rocket. Now, if you heard about all this stuff, I'm very focused on bringing people like Mike and others into the community. If you want to talk and you want to share your opinions about things, contact me on LinkedIn. Let me know. I would love to have you on the show. The other thing, I always have to talk about this. Service Rocket is completely dedicated to a customer education as a service program. So if you want to talk and learn about the things that Mike and I are chatting on today, we have programs that will help you, guide you through the whole life cycle of customer education and how we can produce really great programs. I talk about all this stuff like Mike, man, I've been in this field for a while now, but this is what I'm interested in, the learning journey and helping assist companies through all you need a dial a friend sometimes. And that's what I like to think of us as. We've done it, we've seen it, we've had all kinds of experiences. Enough of that though. Once again, hey Mike, thanks so much for joining me. You're a real value to the community. And anybody has questions, go talk to Mike. He's part of our our expanding clan. We're out there trying to find the others. So thanks again.
Thank you, Dave. The effort that you put into these shows, multiple shows, really is appreciated by so many. So it's not an insignificant, it's a very significant amount of effort. So thank you for doing
Appreciate that.
It's really important.
I appreciate that. All right, folks. I'll always say this on my other podcast, the C-Lab podcast, but I think it's important today. Like, get out there, educate, experiment, try new things. Don't be afraid, and find the others. There's a lot of us out there doing the same thing. I want to talk to you. So again, Mike, thanks for being on the show today. Audience, thanks for being a great audience and asking questions. Let's stir it up. Happy Friday, everybody. Cheers.
Bye.